The chamber was vast, built to hold representatives from 1,000 worlds. Jiwan sat in Earth's designated seat, a modest chair compared to the floating platforms and crystalline thrones around her. She had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 3 years now. In that time, she had learned one important truth. The Council was very good at talking and very bad at doing. Today's emergency session was no different. On the massive holographic display that dominated the chamber's center, images played on repeat. Cities burning, ships falling from the sky, bodies in the streets. The Talvian worlds were dying, and everyone in this room was watching it happen. "We must consider all diplomatic options," said the Vexian representative, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence. Perhaps another sanctions package would send the proper message. Jiwan wanted to scream. The Vraxians had been slaughtering the Talvians for 6 weeks now. 5 billion people were already dead. Sanctions meant nothing to an empire built on conquest and slavery. The Talvian ambassador Hyunwoo stood at the speaker's platform. His people were scholars and artists, peaceful to their core. His voice shook as he spoke. "Please, we have no weapons, no armies. Our people are being hunted like animals. We need help. We need protection." The chamber filled with sympathetic murmurs. Every species present felt terrible about what was happening. None of them planned to actually do anything about it. "The Council cannot sanction military intervention without a unanimous vote," said the Council chairman, an ancient being whose species had supposedly brought peace to this part of the galaxy. "We must follow proper procedures." Jiwan checked her tablet. The debate had been going on for 17 days now. 17 days of speeches and procedures while the Talvian population dropped by millions each day. She had seen this pattern before. The Council would debate until there was no one left to save. Then they would pass a resolution condemning the genocide and promising to prevent future tragedies. She stood up. Protocol said she should request permission to speak, but she was done with protocol. "Ambassador Jiwan of Earth," the chairman said, surprised. "You have not requested the floor." "I don't need the floor to say what I'm about to say," Jiwan replied. Her voice carried across the chamber, amplified by the translation systems. "You're all cowards." The chamber erupted. Representatives from dozens of species shouted in protest. The chairman called for order. Jiwan ignored them all. 6 billion Talvians are dead. 6 billion. And what have you done? You've talked. You've debated. You've formed committees to study the situation. The Vraxians are laughing at you. They know you won't do anything because you never do anything. The Vraxian ambassador, a massive creature covered in armored scales, did laugh. "The human speaks truth for once. You are all weak. Your age of peace has made you soft. We take what we want because no one can stop us." "Enough," the chairman said. "Ambassador Jiwan, you are out of order. Earth is a junior member of this council. You do not have the standing to what? Tell the truth? You're right that Earth is new here. We've only been part of your council for 30 years. But we remember something you've all forgotten." Jiwan looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species who had lived in peace for thousands of years. "We remember what it takes to protect peace. It's not words. It's strength." She pulled out her tablet and sent a message. Just a few words to a secure military channel back on Earth. Then she looked at Hyunwoo, who stood at the platform with tears in his large, dark eyes. "The Galactic Council won't help you," she said. "But Earth will." The chamber exploded again. The chairman demanded she retract her statement. The Vexian representative warned of consequences for unilateral action. The Vraxian ambassador made threats. Jiwan sat down and watched them argue. She had said what needed to be said. Now it was up to others to act. 3 days later, the council was still debating. They had formed a new subcommittee to explore peaceful resolution options. The subcommittee would deliver its findings in 6 weeks. Everyone seemed satisfied with this progress except the Talvians, who would likely be extinct before the subcommittee filed its report. Hyunwoo approached Jiwan after the session ended. "Did you mean what you said? Will Earth truly help us?" "Ships are already on the way," Jiwan said. They left Luna Base the same day I sent my message. But your government, did they approve this? Jiwan smiled. I was a military officer before I became a diplomat. I know how soldiers think. I also know that sometimes you have to act first and ask permission later. How many ships? Hyunwoo asked, hope creeping into his voice. 5 to start. More if needed. Hyunwoo's hope faded. 5 ships? The Vraxians have hundreds in our system alone. How can 5 ships make a difference? You'll see, Jiwan said. Earth ships are different, Earth soldiers are different, we're not like the Council species, we never forgot how to fight. But war, violence, these are terrible things. Yes, they are, Jiwan agreed. That's why we're very good at them. Peace is built on the threat of what happens when someone breaks it. The Council forgot that. We didn't. That night, Jiwan received a coded transmission from the ESS Retribution, the lead destroyer of the task force she had summoned. Captain Minho's face appeared on her screen. We'll reach the Talvian system in 40 hours, he said. Rules of engagement? Protect Talvian civilians. Destroy any Vraxian military forces that threaten them. Don't ask the Council for permission. Don't wait for backup. Just do what needs to be done. Minho nodded. Understood. The crews are ready. We've all seen the footage of what the Vraxians are doing. Nobody here plans to show them mercy. That's exactly what I'm counting on, Jiwon said. Show them what happens when you hurt the helpless. Show them what happens when Earth says no. She ended the transmission and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 5 small ships were racing toward a war zone. The Galactic Council thought Earth was being reckless, that humanity didn't understand how things worked in the wider galaxy. They were wrong. Humanity understood perfectly. The galaxy had rules, and the rules said you debated and discussed and formed committees while people died. Earth had different rules. Earth's rules were simple. Protect the weak, punish the strong, and never let evil flourish because fighting it might be difficult. The Council would be angry. They would accuse Earth of warmongering. They would threaten sanctions and censure. Jiwan didn't care. She had worn a military uniform long enough to know that some things were worth fighting for, and some fights couldn't be avoided no matter how much you talked. The Talvians had begged for mercy. The Council had offered sympathy. Earth was sending warriors. It was enough. General Taehyun arrived with the main fleet 2 weeks after the first battle. 40 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Talvian system. Hyunwoo expected them to take defensive positions around the remaining Talvian worlds. He expected fortifications, barriers, protection. He did not expect what General Taehyun actually did. We're not here to defend, Taehyun announced at the strategy meeting. His staff filled the command center, human officers studying holographic maps of Vraxian space. We're here to attack, Hyunwoo stared at him. Attack? But our worlds still need protection. The Vraxians could come back at any moment. Let them, Taehyun said. They'll find our ships aren't here. They'll be in Vraxian space instead. I don't understand. Taehyun pulled up a map showing the entire sector. Red dots marked Vraxian military installations, supply depots, and occupied worlds. There were hundreds of them. The Vraxians have been conquering and enslaving species for 10,000 years. They have an empire built on fear. Every species they've attacked did the same thing. Tried to defend their homes while the Vraxians slowly overwhelmed them. He pointed at the red dots. We're not going to play their game. We're going to make them play ours. What do you mean? We're going to take the war to them. Hit their supply lines. Raid their bases. Make them worry about their own worlds instead of attacking yours. Right now they think Talvian space is where the war is happening. We're going to show them they're wrong. Over the next 3 days, Hyunwoo watched as human strike teams deployed across Vraxian space. Commander Daeho led special operations units that infiltrated Vraxian command stations. They didn't just gather intelligence. They sabotaged equipment, destroyed supplies, and eliminated high-value targets. The raids were surgical and brutal. A Vraxian fuel depot would explode. A supply convoy would vanish. A base commander would be found dead in his quarters. The Vraxians had never experienced anything like this. In their long history of conquest, no one had dared raid their territory. They pulled ships from the Talvian front to defend their own space. Exactly as General Taehyun had planned. You're using yourself as bait, Hyunwoo realized during one of their strategy sessions. We're using their assumptions as bait, Taehyun corrected. They think we're weak because we're small. They think we'll fight defensively because that's what everyone else does. Every assumption they make about us is wrong, and we're going to exploit that until they have nothing left. The human military advisors began training Talvian volunteers in earnest. Lieutenant Yoonji worked with groups of civilians who had never held weapons before. She taught them how to shoot, how to move, how to work together. You're not becoming warriors, she told them during a training session. You're learning how to protect what you love. There's a difference. One young Talvian named Borum struggled with the rifle. I'm a teacher. I teach children about art and music. How am I supposed to kill someone? Yoonji knelt beside him. You don't have to enjoy it. You don't have to be good at it. You just have to be willing to do it if the alternative is watching your students die. That's all we're asking. Borum nodded slowly and tried again. This time his shots hit the target. The human tactics continued to baffle the Vraxians. They raided during what should have been peaceful supply runs. They ambushed patrols in areas that should have been secure. They used psychological warfare, broadcasting messages into Vraxian space showing their defeats, making them look weak. The Vraxian High Command demanded answers. How were these humans, these newcomers to the galactic stage, causing so much damage? They had superior numbers, superior firepower, and 10,000 years of military tradition, yet they were losing. The answer was simple but hard for the Vraxians to accept. The humans fought dirty. They fought smart. They fought to win, not for glory or honor. Every battle was calculated for maximum impact with minimum risk. Every raid had a purpose beyond just killing the enemy. The Galactic Council watched these developments with growing alarm. Ambassador Jiwon faced increasingly hostile questions. Earth forces are conducting offensive operations deep in Vraxian space, the Council chairman accused. This goes far beyond defensive aid to the Talvians. The Vraxians invaded Talvian space, Jiwon replied calmly. We're making sure they regret it. Is the Council upset that we're actually stopping a genocide instead of just talking about it? You're escalating the conflict. No, we're ending it. There's a difference. The Council threatened sanctions. Jiwon shrugged. Earth had lived without the Council before. They could do it again if needed. Major Ji-hoon commanded a defensive position on Talvia Prime, where Vraxian ground forces had established a foothold. His orders were to hold the line while civilians evacuated from the region. 2,000 Vraxian soldiers pushed forward. Ji-hoon had 200 Marines. The battle lasted 6 hours. The humans used every trick they knew. Booby traps, false retreats, sniper fire, and artillery support. They made the Vraxians pay for every meter of ground. When ammunition ran low, they fought with whatever they could find. In the end, Ji-hoon and most of his unit died, but the civilians got out. All 20,000 of them. His last transmission was broadcast across the galaxy before he fell. We came because no one else would. We stayed because it was right. That's enough. That has to be enough. Those words echoed across human space. More volunteers signed up for military service. More ships prepared to deploy. Earth had drawn a line in the stars, and they weren't backing down. Hyunwoo attended Ji-hoon's memorial service. The humans didn't cry, but their grief was real. They had lost one of their own for people they barely knew, for a species that couldn't even defend itself. Why do you do this? Hyunwoo asked Colonel Sujin as they stood before the memorial marker. You lose people. You spend resources. You make enemies. Why? Sujin was quiet for a moment. Because someone has to. The galaxy is full of species that talk about peace and justice. Earth learned a long time ago that peace doesn't keep itself. Justice doesn't happen because you wish for it. Someone has to be willing to fight for those things, to die for them if necessary. But you're making the Council angry. They see you as warmongers. The Council is angry because we're showing them what they should have been all along, Sujin said. They could have stopped the Vraxians centuries ago if they'd been willing to use force. Instead, they let millions die because fighting was uncomfortable. We're not comfortable with fighting either. We just understand that sometimes it's necessary. As weeks passed, the Vraxian position grew desperate. Their supply lines were in chaos. Their commanders were afraid to sleep. Their soldiers whispered about the humans, turning them into monsters in their minds. General Taehyun prepared for the final phase of his plan. The Vraxian main fleet was gathering, preparing for one massive counterattack. Intelligence suggested they were committing 300 ships, nearly their entire military force. They're going to try to crush us in one battle, Taehyun's intelligence officer reported. Good, Taehyun said, studying the tactical display.
Now we know where they all are. He began moving his pieces into position.
Not to defend, but to trap. The Vraxians thought they were bringing overwhelming force to end the war. They didn't realize they were flying into a carefully prepared killing ground. The Battle of Helios Nebula was about to begin, and General Taehyun planned to make it the last major battle of this war. One way or another, the Vraxians would learn that fighting Earth was a mistake they would never forget. The city was dying. Hyunwoo stood on what remained of the Planetary Defense Command Center and watched smoke rise from 100 fires. This was Talvia Prime, his homeworld, the cultural heart of his civilization. In 3 days it would fall. The Vraxian fleet in orbit was too strong, their soldiers too many. His people had tried to fight back with converted cargo ships and hunting rifles. It had been like throwing stones at a mountain. He had accepted death. Most Talvians had. They were not warriors. They were teachers, artists, scientists. War was something they studied in history files, not something they knew how to wage. When the Vraxians came, the Talvians had tried negotiation, offered surrender, begged for mercy. The Vraxians had simply laughed and continued killing. Sir, his aide said quietly, there are unknown ships approaching the system. 5 of them. More Vraxians. Hyunwoo asked, though it didn't matter anymore. No, sir. The signatures don't match. They're small, very small compared to Vraxian battleships, but they're moving fast. Hyunwoo walked to the sensor station. 5 ships had indeed entered the system, but they looked nothing like the massive Vraxian warships that filled the sky. These were sleek, dark, almost invisible against the black of space. They moved with purpose, like predators stalking prey. The Vraxian fleet detected them too. The Vraxian battle group commander transmitted a message. Hyunwoo's systems picked it up. Unknown vessels, you are entering a restricted military zone. Identify yourselves or be destroyed. The human ships didn't respond with words. They simply opened fire. Hyunwoo had never seen anything like what happened next. The human ships split up, each taking a different vector. They didn't charge straight at the enemy like the Talvian defenders had tried. They came from angles, from behind, from the sides. They used the planet's gravity to slingshot themselves into attack positions. They launched missiles that seemed to think for themselves, dodging the Vraxian defense systems and striking weak points in the enemy ships. The ESS Retribution, the lead human destroyer, flew directly into the middle of the Vraxian formation. It should have been suicide. Instead, it unleashed some kind of electronic attack that blinded half the Vraxian fleet. While they flew blind, the other 4 human ships picked them apart. Hyunwoo watched a Vraxian cruiser 3 times the size of any human ship explode in a ball of fire. Then another. Then 3 more. They're not fighting fair, his aide whispered, shocked. And they weren't. The humans used tricks, ambushes, false retreats. When a Vraxian ship moved to attack, the human vessels would scatter, only to regroup behind the enemy and strike from the rear. They targeted engines and life support instead of shields and weapons. They hacked into Vraxian communications and filled their channels with garbage data. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was terrifying. 3 hours after the human ships arrived, the Vraxian battle group was gone. 15 ships destroyed, 5 fleeing into deep space. The humans had taken no losses. Hyunwoo's communications panel lit up. An incoming transmission from the human fleet. Talvian Defense Command, this is Captain Minho of the Earthship Retribution. We're here to help. Where do you need us? Hyunwoo's hands shook as he opened the channel. Captain, how did you... That fleet was in our way, Minho said simply. We don't have much time. The Vraxians will send reinforcements. We need to set up a defensive perimeter around your remaining population centers. Can you provide coordinates? Over the next day, Hyunwoo learned more about how humans fought. It was nothing like the Galactic Council had taught. The Council believed in honor, in fair fights and giving your enemy a chance. Humans believed in winning. Colonel Sujin came down with the ground forces, 2,000 Marines who moved like they had been born fighting. She met with Hyunwoo personally. We need to talk about your militia, she said. We don't have a militia, Hyunwoo admitted. We have volunteers with whatever weapons we could find. Host have never shot a gun before last week. Sujin didn't look surprised. Then we'll teach them. Basic small unit tactics, defensive positions, how to hold a line. We don't need them to become soldiers. We just need them to survive long enough for us to kill the enemy. This violence, it goes against everything we believe in, Hyunwoo said. I know, Sujin replied, but the Vraxians don't care what you believe in. They're going to kill you unless someone stops them. Would you rather die with your principles intact? Or live to argue about principles another day? Hyunwoo had no answer to that. The human combat instructors worked with the Talvian volunteers. Lieutenant Unji taught them how to hold a rifle properly, how to take cover, how to move as a unit. She was patient but firm. You don't have to like this, she told a group of young Talvians who flinched every time they fired their weapons. You just have to do it. Your families are counting on you. Your species is counting on you. On the third day after the humans arrived, the Vraxians came back. This time they sent 40 ships determined to crush the human defenders and finish their extermination of the Talvians. Hyunwoo watched from the command center as the two fleets met. The Vraxians outnumbered the humans 8-1. They should have won easily. Instead, Hyunwoo watched Captain Minho and his ships dance through the Vraxian formation like they were performing a deadly ballet. The humans never stayed still, never presented an easy target. They coordinated their attacks with precision, focusing fire on one enemy ship until it died, then moving to the next. When the Vraxians tried to push toward the planet, human fighters swarmed them like insects. When the Vraxians pulled back to regroup, the human destroyers pursued and harried them. There was no honor in it, no fair play. It was just cold, calculated violence. By the end of the day, 20 Vraxian ships were debris. The rest retreated. That night, Hyunwoo found Colonel Sujin on the command center balcony looking up at the stars. Your people fight like nothing I've ever seen, he said. The council species, they have rules for war. Honor codes. You ignore all of that. Honor doesn't protect civilians, Sujin said. Honor doesn't bring dead children back to life. The Vraxians started this fight. We're going to finish it. And we're going to use every trick, every tactic, every weapon we have. You know why? Why? Because you asked for mercy. And mercy means something different to us than it does to the council. To them, mercy is being kind and gentle. To us, mercy is making sure the people who need protection get it, no matter what it takes. She looked at him. You wanted mercy? We're giving it to you. This is what mercy looks like when warriors deliver it. Hyunwoo thought about that. His people were alive today because the humans had come. They were alive because someone had finally been willing to fight for them. The Galactic Council is calling Earth aggressive, he said. They say you're bringing barbarism to the stars. Sujin laughed, but there was no humor in it. The Council can call us whatever they want. We came here because you needed help and no one else would give it. Let them judge us. We'll be too busy keeping you alive to care. She was right, Hyunwoo realized. The Council had offered sympathy in speeches. Earth had sent warriors who knew how to fight and weren't afraid to do it. For the first time since the Vraxians had arrived, Hyunwoo allowed himself to hope. Maybe his people would survive this. Maybe Earth's warriors would be enough. In orbit, Captain Minho received new orders from Earth Command. More ships were coming. This wouldn't just be a defense anymore. Earth was going on the offensive. The Vraxians had started a war. They were about to learn what happened when humans finished one. The Vraxian armada was magnificent and terrible. 300 warships, the accumulated might of 10,000 years of conquest. The largest fleet assembled in recent galactic history. They would crush the humans and make an example of Earth for the rest of the galaxy. No one challenged the Vraxian dominion. No one. Fleet Commander Youngman stood on the bridge of the ESS Invictus and watched the sensor readings. The Vraxian fleet was moving exactly as predicted, abandoning caution in their eagerness to end this war. They're taking the bait, his tactical officer reported. Of course they are, Youngman replied. Pride makes you stupid. How long until they reach the Helios Nebula? 6 hours at current speed. Good. Make sure all units are in position. I want them committed before they realize what's happening. The Helios Nebula was a region of space most ships avoided. The dense gases and radiation played havoc with sensors and shields. Navigation was difficult, communication unreliable. It was exactly the kind of place a smart commander would never take their fleet. The Earth forces appeared to be retreating toward it, running from the superior Vraxian numbers. The Vraxians pursued eagerly, dreaming of the glory that would come from crushing humanity's military. They didn't realize until too late that they were flying into a trap. The nebula's interference was random for most ships. But Earth had spent weeks mapping the region, studying the patterns, finding the safe channels. Their electronic warfare systems were designed to work in exactly this kind of environment. The Vraxians had built their fleet for open space combat, for overwhelming firepower and strong shields. In the nebula, none of those advantages mattered. Minseo, a civilian war correspondent who had attached herself to the human fleet, watched from a safe observation ship at the nebula's edge. She had covered conflicts before, but nothing like this. Her broadcast was going out live to billions across the galaxy. The Vraxian fleet is entering the nebula now, she reported. They're in formation, confident they have the humans cornered. They don't know Earth has been planning this for weeks. The first Vraxian ships to enter the nebula immediately lost sensor resolution. Their shields flickered as exotic particles interfered with the generators. Communication between ships became difficult. Then the humans struck. Captain Seojin commanded the strike wings, dozens of fighters that emerged from the nebula's clouds like ghosts. They hit the Vraxian formation from every angle, missiles streaking through the interference that blinded the enemy's defensive systems. Target their command ships first, Seojin ordered. Cut the head off and the body dies. The fighters moved in coordinated patterns, each covering the others, each strike calculated for maximum damage. The Vraxians tried to respond, but their formation was breaking apart. Ships collided with each other, unable to see through the nebula's interference. Then the human destroyers appeared. They had been hiding in the nebula's densest regions, waiting. Now they emerged behind the Vraxian fleet, cutting off their escape. Fleet Commander Youngman watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Vraxians were trying to regroup, but every time they formed up, another human unit would strike from a different angle. The nebula made it impossible for them to track all the threats. "This is what you get," Youngman said quietly, "for assuming we'd fight fair." The battle wasn't glorious. It was slaughter. The humans targeted engines, leaving Vraxian ships stranded. They hacked into communication, sending false orders that caused more chaos. They used the nebula itself as a weapon, driving enemy ships into regions where the interference was strong enough to disable them completely. Minseo's broadcast continued, her voice steady despite what she was witnessing. The Vraxian fleet is being systematically dismantled. The humans aren't just winning, they're making a statement. This is what happens when you threaten those they've sworn to protect. The Galactic Council watched her broadcast in horror. This wasn't warfare as they understood it. This was efficient, calculated destruction. The humans fought like machines with no emotion, no hesitation. Ambassador Jiwan watched from the council chambers. She saw the disgust on the faces of the other ambassadors. They were horrified by humanity's brutality, by the clinical way Earth forces were destroying the Vraxian fleet. "This is barbarism," the Vexian representative declared. "Look at what they're doing. There's no honor in this." "Honor?" G1 stood up. 6 billion Talvians died while you talked about honor. The Vraxians were burning worlds while you debated proper procedure. Earth is ending a war you were too afraid to stop. If that makes us barbarians, then I'm proud to be one. The battle continued for 8 hours. By the end, 240 Vraxian ships were destroyed or disabled. Only 60 escaped, limping back toward Dominion space. The human fleet had lost 4 ships. The Vraxian High Command watched their armada die from their homeworld. They had thought themselves invincible. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. No one had ever defeated them like this. An hour after the battle ended, they sent a transmission to the human fleet, not to the Galactic Council, to Earth directly. "We request terms of surrender." General Taehyun received the message with no satisfaction, no joy. He had spent his career trying to prevent wars, not fight them. But when war came, he fought to win. "These are our terms," he transmitted back. "Complete withdrawal from all occupied territories. Reparations to the Talvians and every other species you've enslaved. Your leadership will stand trial for genocide. You have 24 hours to accept, or we continue operations until your government falls." The Vraxian response came in 12 hours. They accepted every term. Back at the council, the reaction was not celebration but outrage. The chairman called an emergency session. "Earth has violated every principle this council stands for," he declared. "They waged aggressive war, ignored diplomatic channels, and used excessive force. They must be sanctioned." Jiwan had prepared for this. She uploaded a data file to the council's central display. This is a record of 847 requests for council intervention over the past century. 847 times that species asked for help against aggressive powers. 847 times you did nothing while millions died. The chamber fell silent as the list scrolled by. Worlds destroyed, populations enslaved, genocides completed while the council debated. You had your chance to stop the Vraxians, Jiwan continued. You had chances to stop a dozen other conflicts. You chose committees and procedures. You chose to let evil flourish because stopping it required violence. And violence made you uncomfortable. We are a council of peace, the chairman said weakly. No, you're a council of cowards, Jiwan replied. Peace isn't the absence of violence. It's the willingness to use violence to protect those who can't protect themselves. Earth understands that. You don't. She looked around the chamber at species who had lived in comfort while others suffered. You call us barbarians? Maybe we are. But the Talvians are alive because of our barbarism. How many species died because of your civility? The council had no answer. They threatened sanctions, but the threats were empty. 12 species had already sent formal requests to Earth for defense pacts. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. Hyunwoo watched Jiwan's speech from Talvia Prime. His world was still scarred, still rebuilding, but his people were alive. The Vraxians were gone. Earth's warriors had done what the council couldn't. He thought about Major Ji-hoon, who had died protecting Talvian civilians. He thought about the human soldiers who had taught his people to fight. He thought about what Colonel Sujin had said about mercy. Maybe mercy did require strength. Maybe protection required the willingness to do violence. The Talvians had learned that lesson in blood and fire. In orbit above Talvia Prime, the human fleet prepared to stand down. The war was over. The Vraxians would keep their surrender terms or face renewed attacks. Either way, they would never threaten another peaceful species again. Earth had sent its warriors. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the Battle of Helios Nebula, Hyunwoo stood before the new building on Talvia Prime. The structure was made from traditional Talvian materials, but designed with human input. It was both beautiful and functional, artistic yet practical. Above the entrance, words were carved in both Talvian and Earth languages. Talvian Defense Academy. Around him, hundreds of young Talvians gathered for the dedication ceremony. They wore simple uniforms, neither military nor civilian. They were students, ready to learn something their species had never needed before. Colonel Sujin stood beside Hyunwoo, watching the crowd. "Second thoughts?" she asked. "Many," Hyunwoo admitted. "We're a people of scholars and artists. Are we betraying who we are by building this? You're ensuring your grandchildren can still be scholars and artists," Sujin replied. "That's not betrayal. That's wisdom." The ceremony began. Human instructors stood alongside Talvian teachers. They would teach combat tactics and strategic thinking, but also the philosophy behind Earth's military doctrine. The goal wasn't to turn Talvians into humans. It was to give them the tools to survive. Sujin gave the keynote address. She spoke simply, without grand rhetoric or dramatic flourishes. "We didn't come here to change who you are. We came to help you survive. Survival sometimes requires difficult choices. It requires the willingness to fight when all you want is peace. But here's what I want you to remember. Weapons don't make you warriors. The choice to protect others makes you warriors." She looked at the young Talvians, many of whom had lost family to the Vraxian invasion. "You'll learn how to fight here. You'll learn tactics and strategy, but more importantly, you'll learn when to fight and when not to. You'll learn that strength exists to protect the weak, not to dominate them. That's the lesson Earth wants to share." After the ceremony, Hyunwoo walked through the academy grounds with Sujin. Construction crews, both human and Talvian, worked on the remaining buildings. Everywhere he looked, he saw cooperation. His people were learning, adapting, becoming something new while staying true to their core values. "The galaxy is changing," Hyunwoo observed. "Your arrival has shifted everything." "Not just us," Sujin said. "You changed things too. You asked for help when others would have just accepted death. That took courage." Meanwhile, on Earth, a different kind of debate was happening. Admiral Jamin sat across from President Yuna in the Capitol building. Between them lay reports from 12 different species requesting Earth military advisors and defense agreements. "We're becoming the galaxy's police force," Jamin said, concern clear in his voice. "Every species with a problem wants human soldiers to fix it. This is dangerous, Yuna. We can't protect everyone. President Yuna studied the reports. Each one represented a species asking for help, sometimes desperate help. Pirates, raiders, aggressive neighbors, problems the Galactic Council ignored or couldn't solve. We're not becoming police, Yuna replied. We're becoming what the galaxy should have been already, protectors. There's a difference. Is there? How long before we're overextended? How long before we start looking like conquerors instead of defenders? That's why we need clear rules, Yuna said. We only respond to legitimate requests for help. We don't occupy, we don't control. We help species defend themselves, then we leave. We're not building an empire. We're building a network of species that can stand together. Jamin wasn't convinced. The Council sees us as a threat now. They're talking about military restrictions, limits on human expansion. Let them talk, Yuna said. The Council had its chance to lead. They chose bureaucracy over action. We're not asking for their permission anymore. We're doing what's right and dealing with the consequences. Back at the Galactic Council, Ambassador G1 faced those consequences daily. The Council had fractured into factions. Some species feared Earth's military power. Others admired it and wanted to learn from it. The ancient powers that had dominated for centuries suddenly found their influence challenged. The Vexian representative approached her after a particularly heated session. Your species has changed the fundamental balance of this council. That will have consequences. Good, G1 replied. The old balance allowed genocide and slavery to flourish. If we've disrupted that, I'm proud of it. You're making enemies. We already had enemies. We just stopped pretending they were friends. The truth was spreading across the galaxy. Long-range sensors had recorded the Battle of Helios Nebula. The footage showed how completely the humans had dismantled a superior force. Military analysts from dozens species studied the tactics, trying to understand how it was done. What they learned frightened some and inspired others. Humanity hadn't won through superior technology or numbers. They'd won through adaptability, creativity, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary. They fought without honor because honor was a luxury civilians couldn't afford. They fought dirty because clean fights got innocent people killed. Minseo, the war correspondent, published a comprehensive analysis that became required reading across multiple species. Her conclusion was simple. Humanity brings to the galaxy something we had forgotten. The capacity for controlled violence in service of protection. They are neither saints nor monsters. They are what we all should have been when evil arose, willing to act. On a small world in a distant system, a peaceful species detected raiders approaching. They sent out a distress signal, not knowing if anyone would answer. In the past, such signals went ignored. The galactic community would express sympathy after the raiders finished. This time was different. Earth Fleet Command received the transmission. The response time was 90 seconds. 3 destroyers changed course. They would arrive in 48 hours, well before the raiders reached the inhabited worlds. The message they sent back became famous across the galaxy. Earth stands ready. No one fights alone. It was a promise and a warning. A promise to those who needed help. A warning to those who preyed on the weak. The raiders, monitoring galactic channels, detected the Earth response. They immediately changed course, abandoning their attack. The reputation of Earth's warriors had spread. No one wanted to face them. Back on Talvia Prime, the first class of Defense Academy students completed their initial training. They weren't soldiers, not really. They were civilians who now understood that peace required vigilance, that survival sometimes demanded violence, and that protecting what you love was worth fighting for. Borum, the teacher who had struggled with holding a rifle months ago, stood at graduation. He still didn't like guns. He still preferred art and music. But now he understood why he needed to know how to fight. His students needed him alive to teach them. His species needed defenders. I'm not a warrior, he told Lieutenant Yunji at the ceremony. No, she agreed. You're something better. You're a teacher who can protect his students, a scholar who can defend his civilization. That's worth more than being a warrior. Yenwu watched the graduation with mixed feelings. His people were changing, adapting. They would never be a warrior species like some in the galaxy, but they were no longer helpless either. Colonel Sujin found him after the ceremony. We'll be leaving soon. Reduced presence, just military advisors. Your people can handle their own defense now. Will you come back if we need you? Always, Sujin promised. That's what the defense pact means. You're not alone anymore. As the human fleet prepared to leave, taking most of their forces back to Earth, Hyunwoo stood at the spaceport. He thought about everything that had happened. The death, the destruction, the hard lessons learned. The Galactic Council had offered sympathy when his people were dying. Earth had sent warriors who knew how to fight and weren't afraid to do it. The difference had saved his species. Up in orbit, Captain Minho prepared his ship for departure. He received a message from Earth Command. New assignment, another species requesting help. The work never ended. There was always someone who needed protection, always some threat that required a response he didn't mind. This was what Earth had chosen to be. Not conquerors, not empire builders, protectors. Jiwon remained at the council, fighting diplomatic battles that were just as important as the military ones. She faced hostility daily from species who resented Earth's new prominence. She didn't care. The Talvians were alive. That was what mattered. In her private quarters, she recorded a message to be sent back to Earth. They're calling us the Terran Guard now. Protectors of the weak. Scourge of tyrants. They mean it as an insult, but I think it's accurate. We guard what others won't. We stand where others retreat. Maybe that makes us different from the rest of the galaxy. I think it makes us necessary. Across the galaxy, the message spread. Earth stands ready. Earth protects its allies. Earth does not negotiate with those who harm the innocent. It was a new era. The age of endless council debate was ending. A new power had emerged, one that valued action over words, protection over process. Not everyone liked it. But the weak, the threatened, the desperate, they welcomed it. Because when they begged for mercy, Earth sent its warriors. And those warriors delivered something more valuable than mercy. They delivered survival. The galaxy would never be the same.